In the quiet rolling hills of Westmoreland County, Virginia, under a cold February sky in 1732, a boy was born who would one day carry the weight of an impossible dream. His name was George Washington, and though no crown waited for him, history had already chosen his shoulders. Few could have known that this quiet child would stand between chaos and hope, between empire and freedom, and shape a nation that did not yet exist. George grew up without great wealth or noble blood. His father died when he was only 11, leaving his education unfinished and his future uncertain. But what George lacked in schooling, he replaced with discipline and focus. He learned surveying, geometry, and the hard lessons of the land. As a young man, he traveled through the wild Virginia frontier, measuring fields and forests, learning patience, danger, and leadership long before he ever held command over men. By his early 20s, Washington entered the world of war. The French and Indian War was brutal and unforgiving, and his first command ended in defeat at Fort Necessity. Yet even in failure, he showed calm under pressure. Soldiers noticed. Officers remembered. Later, during a disastrous British campaign, Washington rode through gunfire to rally broken troops, emerging as a symbol of courage when others fled. These early scars shaped him into a leader who valued preparation and restraint. After war, he returned to Virginia and married Martha Custis, a wealthy widow who brought stability and comfort into his life. At Mount Vernon, overlooking the Potomac River, Washington became a respected planter and a quiet figure in colonial politics, but peace did not still his mind. As Britain tightened its grip through taxes and laws passed across the ocean, Washington felt something stir. The colonies were being treated as subjects, not partners. Resistance grew, and Washington stood among those who believed dignity was worth defending. When shots were fired at Lexington and Concord in 1775, the colonies turned toward war. In Philadelphia, the Continental Congress searched for a leader. Washington arrived tall and composed, wearing his uniform without arrogance. He was chosen to command an army that barely existed. What followed were 8 years of hunger, cold, defeat, and doubt. The army nearly collapsed in New York. Men froze at Valley Forge, supplies vanished, hope flickered, yet Washington stayed. He listened, he endured. He refused to quit. Slow victories followed: Trenton, Princeton, with help from France and patience. Carved from suffering, the final moment came at Yorktown in 1781. The British surrendered. The war was over. Power rested in Washington's hands, and the world waited. He could have become king. Instead, he resigned and went home. In that single act, the future of democracy changed forever, but peace was fragile. The new nation struggled under weak laws. In 1787, Washington was called again, this time to preside over a convention meant to save the country from itself. He spoke little, but his presence held the room together. When the Constitution was complete, there was only one man the people trusted to lead it. In 1789, George Washington became the first president of the United States. There were no rules, no examples to follow. Every step mattered. He formed a cabinet, studied the economy, calmed rebellion, and kept the young nation out of foreign wars. He refused royal titles and stepped down after 2 terms, teaching America that leadership was a duty, not a possession. When Washington died in 1799, the world mourned. Bells rang, flags fell. A nation wept not just for a man, but for the standard he set. Yet the story of America did not end with him. It passed quietly into the hands of a different kind of leader, a man of words instead of swords. In a modest town in Massachusetts, John Adams had always believed that law and reason were stronger than violence. While others chased glory, Adams defended truth, even when it made him hated. He argued for independence when many feared it. He stood alone in courtrooms and Congress halls, pushing an idea that liberty must be built on justice, not anger. As the new republic took its first uncertain steps, Adams watched closely. He knew freedom was fragile. He knew power could corrupt even good men. And soon, when Washington stepped away, the burden would fall on him. As night deepens and history breathes softly, the young nation stands at a crossroads. The sword has rested. Now the pen must decide what America will become. And the next chapter is waiting. When George Washington stepped away from power, the nation held its breath. There was no crown, no throne, no strong hand guiding the ship anymore. Instead, America turned to a man very different from its first leader. John Adams was not tall, or silent, or commanding. He was sharp, restless, and deeply thoughtful. He believed the new nation would survive not by force, but by law, reason, and self-control. John Adams became the second president in 1797. He inherited a country still unsure of itself, caught between powerful enemies overseas and bitter arguments at home. France and Britain were at war and both threatened American ships. Many demanded war. Adams chose peace. It was not a popular choice. His own party turned against him. Newspapers mocked him. Friends abandoned him. But Adams believed that avoiding war would save the fragile republic. History would later agree, but at the time, the cost was heavy. He lost re-election and returned quietly to his farm in Massachusetts. As Adams faded from public life, a new voice rose, softer but sharper, guided not by the battlefield or the courtroom, but by ideas. Thomas Jefferson believed words could move nations. In a candlelit room years earlier, he had written the Declaration of Independence, giving voice to a dream the world had never heard so clearly. Now, in 1801, Jefferson became the third president of the United States. Jefferson imagined America as a land of farmers, thinkers, and free minds. He cut taxes, reduced the army, and tried to keep government small. Yet history tested him quickly. When France offered to sell the vast Louisiana territory, Jefferson faced a choice. The Constitution did not clearly allow such a purchase, but the future demanded it. He chose vision over fear. With one decision, the nation doubled in size, stretching toward lands no American had yet seen. Jefferson's presidency was filled with hope, but also contradiction. He spoke of liberty while owning enslaved people. He dreamed of freedom while living within injustice. These tensions quietly followed the nation forward, unresolved. Growing heavier with time. After Jefferson came James Madison, small in stature but towering in thought. Madison had studied governments the way others studied stars. He believed balance was the key to survival. As the fourth president, he faced a challenge Jefferson had tried to avoid. War came again, this time with Britain. The War of 1812 burned Washington itself. The White House stood in ashes. Yet the nation survived. When the war ended, Americans felt something new. Pride, identity. They had stood alone and endured. James Monroe followed, ushering in what many called the era of good feelings. For a moment, politics softened. The country expanded. Roads were built. Trade grew. Monroe spoke calmly but firmly to the world, declaring that Europe should no longer interfere in the Americas. The Monroe Doctrine did not roar, but it echoed. For generations, but beneath the calm surface, cracks were forming. Slavery expanded westward. New states upset the balance. Compromises delayed conflict but never healed it. The nation moved forward, but uneasily. Then came a storm in the shape of a man. Andrew Jackson rose from poverty and violence, carrying scars from war and loss. He believed fiercely in the power of the common man. As president, he tore down old systems, destroyed the National Bank, and reshaped the presidency into something louder and stronger. To many, he was a hero. To others, a tyrant. Jackson's greatest shadow came from his treatment of Native American nations. Forced removals led to suffering and death along the Trail of Tears. The land grew. The nation expanded. But the cost was written in grief that history can never erase. After Jackson, presidents came and went. Some guided gently, some struggled. William Henry Harrison served only a month before dying. John Tyler took power by accident and rewrote constitutional traditions simply by refusing to step aside. James Polk reshaped the map through relentless expansion, adding vast lands in the West, while planting the seeds of future conflict over slavery. As the nation grew larger, it grew more divided. The question could no longer be avoided. Could a country built on freedom survive while half of it lived in chains? The answer did not come quickly. Weak leaders hesitated. Compromises failed. Tension rose like a storm cloud over the horizon. And soon, a tall, quiet man from a log cabin would step forward, carrying not certainty, but resolve. As the night deepens, history leans closer. The Union stands fragile. The next president will not only lead, he will decide whether the American dream lives or dies. And Abraham Lincoln is waiting. Abraham Lincoln came from silence and soil. Born in a small log cabin in Kentucky, he carried no title, no wealth, no promise of greatness. He lost his mother young, knew hunger and hard labor, and taught himself by candlelight. Books became his refuge. Words became his strength. By the time he reached the presidency in 1861, the nation was already breaking apart. Southern states had seceded. The Union was cracking. War was no longer a threat. It was reality. Lincoln stepped into office with sorrow in his eyes and steel in his heart. He did not seek war, but he would not let the nation die. When the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, the Civil War began, and Lincoln carried its weight every single day. The war was long and brutal. Battles took sons from families and hope from towns. Lincoln faced failure after failure with generals who could not deliver victory. He buried his own child while the country burned. Yet he endured, quietly, steadily, and in the darkest hour, he made the boldest choice of his life. In 1863, Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. It did not free all enslaved people at once, but it changed the soul of the war. Freedom became the cause. Justice became the goal. Later, at Gettysburg, Lincoln spoke only a few minutes, yet his words reshaped the meaning of America. A nation dedicated to the idea that all are equal. When the war finally ended in 1865, Lincoln spoke not of revenge, but of healing, with malice toward none, with charity for all. But peace would not get the chance to grow. Just days after victory, Lincoln was assassinated. The nation wept. Bells rang again. History paused. America had lost its moral compass. Reconstruction followed under Andrew Johnson, a man shaped by hardship but blinded by resentment. He resisted efforts to protect the rights of freed Black Americans and clashed fiercely with Congress. The wounds of war deepened instead of healing. Johnson was impeached but survived by a single vote. The nation moved forward, uneasy and divided. Then came Ulysses S. Grant, the quiet general who had won the war. As president, Grant fought to protect civil rights and use federal power against violent groups that sought to terrorize freed citizens. He believed in unity and peace. Yet corruption spread among those around him, staining his presidency. Still, Grant's heart remained honest, and his devotion to equality would be remembered long after the scandals faded. As years passed, presidents tried to guide a growing nation through industry, expansion, and change. Rutherford B. Hayes ended Reconstruction and hopes of peace, but justice was delayed. James Garfield served only months before being assassinated. Chester Arthur surprised the nation by fighting corruption. Grover Cleveland believed deeply in duty and restraint. America entered a new age. Cities grew. Railroads stretched across the land. Wealth rose, but so did inequality. Theodore Roosevelt burst onto the scene with energy and force, believing the presidency should protect the people. He broke monopolies, preserved nature, and carried America onto the world stage. Woodrow Wilson led during World War I, speaking of democracy and peace, yet failing to secure lasting unity at home. The Great Depression followed under Herbert Hoover, and despair spread like winter across the nation. Then came Franklin D. Roosevelt, whose calm voice reached families through radios in dark rooms. He promised action, not fear. Through the New Deal in World War II, he reshaped the role of government and guided America through global fire. Harry Truman made hard choices in a broken world. Dwight Eisenhower brought quiet strength. John F. Kennedy inspired hope and youth, only to be taken too soon. Lyndon Johnson pushed civil rights forward while Vietnam tore the nation apart. Richard Nixon resigned in shame. Jimmy Carter tried to heal. Ronald Reagan spoke of optimism. The Cold War ended. New challenges rose. Through every generation, the presidency changed. Some leaders rose to the moment, others failed it. But the story was never just about power. It was about responsibility. Each president held the fragile idea passed down from Washington, shaped by Adams, written by Jefferson, defended by Lincoln. America was never perfect. It stumbled. It contradicted itself. It struggled. But it endured because people believed in the idea more than the men. The idea that leadership is service. That power must be limited. That freedom must be protected, even when it is uncomfortable. As you close your eyes and drift into sleep, imagine a long road stretching through time. Along it walk men of different voices, faces, and flaws. Some carry swords. Some carry pens. Some carry burdens too heavy for one life. They walk not toward glory, but toward duty. The story of the presidents is not a story of perfection. It is a story of effort, of choosing again and again to try. And as the night grows quiet, that story continues, carried forward by the dream that began with a single choice to lead without a crown.